welcome, and I thank you again for joining me for another episode here of Foundation. I am your host and servant, Steve Teed, asking you that one important question. What are you building your life on? Because what you build your life on will determine how you see things, how you live, and it will determine everything that is around you. So the question, are you building on a firm foundation, or are you building it on one that is on the sand, the shifting sand? So today, let me turn down the music and I'll tell you where we're going to head out today. We're getting a little bit excited for you because we've got a brand new section coming up, a brand new portion coming up. It's going to be called Drop the Ball. Drop the Ball. I'll tell you more about that later on. But before we get there, we got a couple of news stories I want to cover. And we're going to be asking some questions. Are you using gender-neutral language? That's one of the ones that we'll cover because that's one. And if you're not, you can just make some up, apparently. But it's really all about the definition of words and adding words to our vocabulary. That is changing things. And so you got to be careful when you speak. And then the other question I'm asking is, what are they selling to our kids? Or what are cartoons selling? That's where we're going to go. We're going to visit those things off today. So enjoy with me in this journey. And again, I thank you for joining me. So let's get into our show. Let's jump right in. And we're going to see our news story to start up. So if we're going to do some news, we need our news music. Let's pull up the news music here. Our first news story that's going to come to you today is actually coming from the Daily Wire. The Daily Wire, which it's a conservative news source, obviously, but it's titled the article "Exclusive. White liberals are far more likely to use the term Latinx or Latinx than Hispanics. They're far more likely than to use it than Hispanics." Now, maybe you're wondering, if you're like me, what on earth is Latinx or Latinx? I'm not even sure how to pronounce it. I'm sure that if I really tried, I would be messing it up. Spanish is not my first language. Obviously, my first language is English. I do understand a few other languages, and I can read a little bit. Spanish is not one of them. It's not a big program here in Canada for Spanish. But I want us to understand what exactly is going on. That might be something that you're going, what on earth is it? I've never even heard of this. So what is it? Well, you got to understand, they want all language to be gender neutral. You don't want to be upsetting anybody. So in English, we've got easy way here. We've got him, we got her, we've got they. Our they is pretty gender neutral. Pretty sure they don't really want to be called it, but it's pretty gender neutral. Yet, not every language is like this. Like, for example, if you go over to French is il, elle, ils, elles. It's not really gender neutral. In the singular, you kind of have a gender neutral, but in the plural, you don't. Everything is masculine and feminine. And my wife really experienced this when she first came to where we are. Before we were married, she stayed with a French couple. And you would hear things being said like, "Hey, the car, she's a nice car, eh?" A little bit of a French accent, but notice it says she is. Why? Because in French, the car is feminine. It's a feminine noun. Spanish and French are very close together. They don't really have this gender neutral. But of course, that doesn't sit well. So why? We don't want to be offensive. So what do? We got to make up words. That's really what we got to do. So since Spanish doesn't have a gender neutral term, they make up one to try to appeal, this is in the States, to try to appeal to the Hispanic voters. That term was Latinx or Latinx or whatever. And so they did a poll on this, and they surveyed like 1,029 registered voters who were asked, when it comes to describing people who are of Spanish-speaking heritage of some kind, which of the following terms do you think is most appropriate to use? And so on that list was their normal ones, and they added Latinx. So, but it said the most popular response was Hispanic, and that was selected by 42% of respondents, including 55% of the Hispanic respondents. By their own nationality, ranked second with 26, so where they were from. So be it Mexico, wherever. And then that was followed up by Latino or Latina. Not Latinx, not a made-up term, just the actual terms. They were fine with being feminine and masculine and that kind of thing. So where did it come from? Well, it became popularized by those who were seeking to introduce or gender-neutral nouns, or rather trying to introduce and force their ideology onto a group and onto a culture. That's what it was. And it's been used for at least a decade, just never was popular, and it was added to the Merriam-Webster dictionary in 2018, but it still hasn't caught on. So which group is the one that really is pushing for this? What group is it? Well, it's really the, like it or not, the white Democrats. That's really who's using it. Well, it's generally what it is. They're pushing an ideology. Now, you say, why is that a news story? Why would that be a news story? Why is that so important to really discuss? Because it comes down to language. It really does. And I don't know if you've noticed over the last while, the usage of terms has changed. Now, sometimes this just happens gradually over time. Take the word unicorn. You go, what's a unicorn? If I ask what's a unicorn, you're probably picturing, like most people, a horse with a horn. Most likely. And I wouldn't say you're wrong. I'm saying you're using the modern definition. But the King James Bible uses the word unicorn. Yet some, therefore, are saying, well, therefore, the Bible is mythological. It's fake. It's a fairy tale because it uses the word unicorn. Well, of course it uses the word unicorn when you actually think about it. In the earliest Merriam-Webster dictionary, the earliest dictionaries, the word unicorn meant a one-horned beast. And then you can actually look it up. It says AKA Rhinoceros or rhinoceros, a one-horned beast. You say, well, why is that important? Well, because the King James Bible, when it was written, when it was translated into the English, was before the word unicorn became to mean a horse with one horn. So that's an important distinction. Language changes. And here's the thing. If you can control the language, you can control the narrative. You can. Just take, for examples, the Flintstones. I won't sing it because you don't want to hear it, but the Flintstones theme song, it ends, "We'll have a gay old time." Or how about the lyrics to Deck the Halls? "Now we don our gay apparel." So what did gay mean? Gay meant festive, happy, joyous. That's what it used to mean. Now it means something very different. Well, who took the word? That was somebody else borrowed the word. So that happens. But let's go more modern. How about a word like phobia? What was a phobia? A phobia used to mean an irrational fear of something. Arachnophobia, claustrophobia. These were debilitating fears that people would have that would stop them from being able to function, and they were irrational. When you come down, like especially where I am, for arachnophobia, people are afraid of spiders. I see it all the time on social media. People are like, spider, spider, spider. Big deal. Here, there's no poisonous spiders. You see a spider, step on it and go on your way. Big deal. But yet people are afraid of them. But now let's take the same thing. What do? How about homophobia? You know, I have not yet met anybody who has an irrational fear of homosexuality. They really don't. They don't have an irrational fear of homosexuality, but they use the word homophobia. What are they using it for? They're not using it for irrational fear. They're using it for anybody who's against this. Anybody who doesn't agree with it. That is homophobia. That's what they're saying. And they continue on. What about Islamophobia? Well, Islamophobia, you're afraid of Islam. Well, I'm not afraid of Islam. I've studied Islam. I know what Islam is. But this is language change. How about one of the more recent ones today? Anti-vax. Anti-vax. You know, I don't know anybody who's really anti-vax. I know plenty of people who are what you classify as vaccine hesitant, who are against vaccine mandates, but anti-vax? not so much. But why do they do it? Why do they change the language? Why? Because they're pushing an idea. They're pushing an ideal that they want to cover. And it's forcing people to use this language. How about another one that is used? I'm just giving you examples. How about the term cisgender? Cisgender. Why would they use it? Why would they use the term cisgender? You see, when it gets used, what they've done is they've taken what is normal. First of all, let me define cisgender, because my wife asked me that one time. What does it mean to be cisgender? What does that even mean? Cisgender, according to the definition, it means you feel, your biological feelings match the biological physical. That's how they define cisgender. That's a way to look at it. That I'm a boy on the outside and I feel like I'm a boy on the inside. Therefore, I would be classified as cisgender. That's what they've done. But you say, well, that's not so bad. Well, here's the thing. Because of that term cisgender, it therefore adds validity to such things as non-binary, gender non-conforming, to transgenderism, to this whole bit. It adds it, and they've got a whole slew of them. It adds affirmation to it. So every time you now use the word cisgender, you're making the statement that this is only one valid of many genders. And see, this is being pushed on you. And the reason I want to speak about this so carefully is because of the fact that language has meaning and is being made convoluted. And I remember, and this is where I've talked to plenty of people. I remember even sitting before a board before, and I was having a conversation with somebody, and the person was using a term, and I was using the same term. Yet, we seem to be talking past each other. We seem to be getting a little bit upset at each other. And so I said, stop for a minute. Stop for a moment. Let's define this term. Let's define it. And he said, well, why do I need to do that? Because I said, I think we're talking past each other. We got two total different definitions. And I've had that happen on more than one occasion, where we use a word, they use a word, and it's completely different. How about the term inspired? Now, if you find most Christians who are conservative, most Christians who are orthodox, and you ask them, do you hold that the Bible is inspired? And they'll say yes. You go into progressive Christianity, though, and you ask them the exact same question. Do you believe the Bible is inspired? They'll say yes. But what you have to now ask is, what do you mean by inspired? For the Orthodox Christian, inspired means it was given by God, and God is the one who watches over and guards his text. For the progressive, inspired, well, the Bible is just one of many inspired things. Like a song could be inspired, or a work of art can be inspired. That's kind of what they've done. And so this is what you have to watch. This is what I want to warn us about. That if you can control the language, you can control the culture. You can control the narrative. And this is how you fool people into it. And this is why they use terms such as homophobic. Why? Because they make you say, well, are you homophobic? Well, no. I'm not afraid of homosexuality. I'm not afraid of homosexuals. And so you don't want to be classified as that. And so they control the narrative. And this is what you have to watch. And this is what they're doing. And so this is happening all around us. And you have to be careful because they've changed definitions of words in dictionaries. They've changed the meaning of them. And so they can make them mean whatever they want. Take for the term sexual assault. Now, I jokingly say to my wife every once in a while that, hey, I was like, I've been sexually assaulted 3 times today. And you're going, sexually assault, that's absolutely horrible. And then you look up the definition of sexual assault nowadays. Sexual assault can mean, and this is how it's so broad now, that it can mean unwanted advances or pet names. And so I was at Pizza Delight. My kids like Pizza Delight. They like the garlic fingers. I like their barbecue chicken pizza. Hey, I think it's great. Nice lady there. She works there. But she just happens to call people dear. I'm a married man. That's sexual assault. Why? Because I didn't want it. See, and this is the problem. Definitions have changed so much that you've got to be careful with it. And so in a world that says there's no absolutes, well, they want to change words. They want to change definitions, just like you're seeing with here with changing the Latinx. And that's our problem. And so you've got to be assured of it. You got to stand on the foundation, because I guarantee you, words that as Christians use, they're used in other sections of the world and other places, and they don't mean the same thing. And they're being trained to do this. They really are. People, the leaders and educators are being trained to use language in a certain way. And so we have to be on guard against this with our kids. Now, how can we be so guard against it? Well, simple. Stand on a firm foundation. Stand on a firm foundation. Now, that was just the opening one. I want to get to the second one, which is a much bigger story. And so I got to hit our music. Let's hit our next music thing here. Hit it up. Give it a second to kick in. There we go. There's our music for our second news story. So you may go, what is the second news story? Well, it was all on, if you remember the opening, it was what are cartoons selling nowadays? What are cartoons selling? That's really what it is. Because, and I'm looking at this, this one's going to be a little older of an article, but it's one that is still desperately important. I was gonna argue this for a little different. I was gonna come at it with a different title. I was gonna come at it with the idea of our kids are under attack, which I firmly believe they are. If you've been with me for any time, you know that I firmly believe that the ideologies are being pushed on our children in the school system, in the media. And this is really going to show you why, as a parent, as somebody who desires for young people to build on a firm foundation. If you want kids to have strong mental health, you want kids to develop great self-esteem, you got to be on guard against these things, because it leads down the wrong path. And so I'm calling this one, what are cartoons selling? This was coming from a Netflix series that came out by DreamWorks. It was a remake of She-Ra. I think wasn't the original one called She-Ra the Princess of Power? But they kind of renamed it She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. And here's some of the article from CNN. It says, is a brilliant reimagination of the 1980s cartoon franchise about a magical princess spinoff from He-Man. Like I said, I think it was about one. And this is what, it's an article, it's an opinion. And it says, I'm still on an emotional high. Now why? Because She-Ra has been changed. She-Ra has been changed completely. Look at the first one. It says the first iteration of She-Ra, created by Larry DiTillio and J. Michael Straczynski. Somebody's going to obliterate me for that because I completely blew that name. Sorry to you, J. Michael. It was canceled after 2 seasons, and here's why it says, and it seemed primarily a vehicle to sell Mattel toys. Really? Cartoons are designed to sell toys? Never heard of such a thing. You ever heard of Pokemon? Jeez, that was a game first. Then they made it into a show. Yeah. Cartoons selling toys. Never heard of that at all. Come on now, people. You really? Anyway, it's designed to sell toys. But yeah, so they say it seemed designed to sell toys. Well, maybe it did. Maybe it didn't. I was pretty young during this time. It was the 80s. I do remember some of it. But my question is, if the original was designed to sell toys, what is the new one designed to do? I'll even tell you. It says showrunner Noelle Stevenson's take on this cult classic foreground stelling does a different take on it. It rethinks, here's the thing, gender, sexuality, and power. It says, and building on the groundbreaking work of the Steven universe, which I'm going to talk about in a minute because it is absolutely horrible, represents queerness as a multifaceted human experience. So what did they do? They take a character like She-Ra and they turn her queer or lesbian. That's what they've done. Why would they do this? Well, it's to target kids. It really is. It is to target children. Think about it. If you're a parent like me who grew up in the 80s with shows like He-Man and She-Ra, and you've watched these shows, and you probably have some pretty fond memories of 80s cartoons. Some of them are great. Gummy Bears was a great cartoon. The Smurfs, things like that. Some of them aged well, some of them didn't. But you got this idea. You got kids growing up saying, I want them to experience the childhood joy that I've got. It's just natural, isn't it? And so you see a remake of your favorite show coming up. Now, I know they've remade He-Man a couple of times, I think. I watched one of the remakes. Actually, it wasn't too bad. And you sit there and say, they can watch the show. So, yeah, they're watching She-Ra. I used to watch that one as a kid. It was a pretty good show. And you put them down and you say, they're there for a half hour. And you go, I'm going to go make some supper. And you come back and this is what they're learning. This is what they're being taught. It's sneaking it in. It's attacking your children. And this isn't the only one. Now, I'm just kind of picking on She-Ra there. But I want to go to another CNN article. This one came out a little newer. This was September of last year. Seems a little funny to say that because we're still at the start of 2022. And the article is called Non-Binary Characters Like Gonzarella Are Lighting Up Children's TV and Encouraging Self-Acceptance. This isn't encouraging self-acceptance. This is confusing the children. It really is. It's not encouraging self-acceptance. It's trying to get them to accept something that is not right. That's what it is. It says, earlier this summer, a new princess giddily square danced onto the scene. They got blue fur, a nose shaped like a honk, and a thing for chickens. They're a Muppet. One you've probably known for a while. And then they said their name is Gonzarella. And what they've done is they set up this, I didn't watch the episode, but I've read this article. They set up a ball. And so they had the rules that boys have to come as knights, girls come as princesses. But Gonzo doesn't want to do that. So therefore, it's completely okay to wear a dress, that kind of thing. And again, this pushes the area of LGBTQ. This is what it's doing. Let me read this. I'm going to read this this paragraph for you. It says, the Gonzarella episode of Muppet Babies. Again, that was a show that I watched a couple times when I was a young kid. My wife, too. We would never watch it today. Said it's one of the most recent and widely celebrated examples of animated children's television tackling non-binary and gender diverse identity. No, it is one of the many that are pushing the identity, pushing this poor foundation, pushing this false thing onto the next generation. Then it says, earlier this year, Blue's Clues and You shared an animated pride parade. I saw it, I talked about it in multiple places. It is absolutely horrible. And it says that it features a non-binary dolphin that used a wheelchair. Yeah, that's not all it pushed. Don't forget, it was hosted by a drag queen. It talked about pansexuality, bisexuality, non-sexuality for some reason, is what it really did. Then it said series for older kids like She-Ra and the Princess of Powers and the pioneering Steven universe center romantic storylines for non-binary and LGBTQ characters and positive depictions of self-discovery and acceptance. This is being pushed on children. And then they say, for children whose gender expression may not subscribe to the preconceived notions of what a boy or a girl should look like or act. I'm going to stop right there. What do they mean they don't prescribe to the preconceived notions? Whose preconceived notions? That's the question to ask. Whose preconceived notions? Boys are boys, girls are girls. See, the problem is, again, what are they doing? They're saying they separate the two things into two groups, and then they try to say, hey, you don't fit this. Boys, you play with G.I. Joes. You play with war things. Girls, you play with Barbies and dolls and dresses. And so when you get a boy who says, hey, I want to play with that Barbie doll, oh, they must be a girl. You get a girl who likes to play sports. She must really be a transgender guy. That's almost how their argument is going. Look, we made fun of this a long time ago, before this ever became the thing. I remember I was working in camping, and we were playing a game, Big Bad Soccer, where the soccer ball is like, 3.5 feet tall. And I was one of the more athletic guys, and I was going after the ball, and I didn't see her coming. This girl, my coworker, she was very athletic too. She hit the ball, and I didn't see it. It caused me to go head over heels. And then they gave her the nickname Bender, as in gender bender. She was breaking those gender limits. But it didn't mean that she was suddenly a boy, that she was transgender. No, but this is what they're doing. They're saying, well, they don't conform to these things, and so therefore we've got to represent them. Well, see, there's your problem. You're pushing the ideology onto these kids. That's what has happened. They're saying it's representation, but it's not representation. You're pushing it. When it appears over and over and over again, this is the problem. You've got to watch out for this as parents looking over the kids. They're targeting the kids. That's what they're doing. Because look, so but to very young viewers, Muppet Babies is geared at kids aged 4 and up. Ages 4. What 4-year-old do you really know that has a great understanding of gender and gender issues? What 4-year-old has a great understanding of who they are? If a 4-year-old boy comes up and says, hey, I want to be a girl, ask them, what is a girl? Or why do you want to be a girl? Why do you want to be a girl? And they can't give you the answer. It would be something like, well, I want to play with dolls. Well, go ahead and play with dolls. It's like, well, I want to do gymnastics. Go ahead and do gymnastics. Great people do gymnastics. I want to figure skate. Yeah. Go be Stoico. Go be the next Stoico. Great figure skater. Used to watch him. Go ahead. Nothing wrong with that. Elvis Stoico. You can look him up. Find some of his routines. Great. Go ahead. That doesn't make him a girl. They're pushing the ideology on it. I encourage you. There's a clip. I might make it available again. You go look it up and look up this clip from Transhood. And you can see that the parents are pushing the idea of transgenderism onto them. That's really what it is. And this is being pushed on them more and more and more. And then you wonder, what is this Steven universe? Rebecca Sugar, I'll give you a little bit. I never watched it until later. Rebecca Sugar, the creator of the Cartoon Network's sweet contemplative series Steven Universe and its sequel, had a feeling young viewers would understand her characters without labeling them. The cast is full of characters who are non-binary, LGBTQ, and otherwise challenge the gender binary through their gender expression. And they said, we knew kids would get into it. Kids love good storytelling and funny cartoon characters. I guarantee you they do. My kids love Despicable Me. They do. They'd watch it over and over again. They like Alvin and the Chipmunks. They really did. They like the movie Cars. So what did they actually do? They took something the kids love and then they put a message that they want to get across. This isn't getting them to, how did they express it? How did they say? To be self-acceptance. This was put on them to push an ideal. This is what's happening. And it's being celebrated in circles. It's being celebrated by some of these people. And you say, why? Well, they're saying, well, I want fair representation. That's what they want. I want fair representation. Look, I'm going to tell you, as a straight white male Christian, I want fair representation. I want to see a Christian who is portrayed in a movie, in a secular movie, on a secular television show, who is not considered bigoted, who's not considered pushy, and who is just living out their faith. But they won't do it. Why? Because they don't want that representation, despite the fact that there are more people in North America who would identify as Christian than there are who would identify as LGBTQ. Yet you don't see every cartoon, every child's cartoon, every movie coming out having a good, real good Christian character. Why? Because they're not interested in that. They're interested in pushing a perversion amongst the children. They're interested in pushing this kind of thing on amongst them. This is what they want to do. They want to teach acceptance. No, they don't want to teach acceptance. They want to teach a foundation that is built on subjectiveness, that is built on however you feel, on a foundation that goes against the norms and truthfully goes against God. That's what it is. And this is where we have to train a child. They've understood something that is a biblical principle. You train a child in the way he should go, and when he's older, he'll not depart from it. It's a proverb. And what have they done over the last generation and a half? They have targeted children. And so as they've grown up, you're seeing the fruits of this labor. This is what you're doing, where people can't even identify anything, where you have university students who are more inclined to say that the Holocaust didn't happen or it's been exaggerated, where they get offended at everything because this is how they've been trained to think. Critical thinking has gone out the window. Now they want parrots. They want robots. And it's been done from the moment these kids have been grown up. Why do you think they want both parents working? Why? Because then they put their kids in preschools or in daycares. And then what does that do? You say, well, my daycare is a good daycare. It may be a good daycare. I'm not faulting the daycares themselves. But what does it do? It takes away those bonding years, which are most important for the child to grow and develop with the parents. And instead of latching onto their parents, they latch onto their peers. Therefore, peer pressure and peer acceptance becomes the driving factor. And this is what you see happening in our culture. Why you don't want to be labeled homophobic. Why you don't want to be labeled Islamophobic. Why you don't want to be labeled as anti-vax. Why? Because you want to be part of the collective. Yet Jesus Christ calls us to stand on the outside. Jesus Christ calls us to stand up for what is true. And if you want to build strong children, start at the beginning to teach them what it really means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. Not just a convert, a disciple of Jesus. One who follows in the footsteps of the apostles, who were willing to lay down their life. You want to know what it was like? Go read Hebrews chapter 11, particularly the end of it, and see how people would put their faith in Christ, what they would do. Because what we have now is a foundation that is shaky, is shifting sand, and is being pushed, and our kids are being targeted. Now, I'm gonna need a commercial break here. I'm a little too worked up, but it's all right. We're gonna take a commercial break. I think today we're gonna go to a musical interlude again. That's what we're gonna do. Enjoy our musical interlude. When we come back, we'll have our new segment called "Dropping the Ball." Dropping the ball.
I heard an old story, how a Savior came from glory. And I heard about the streets of gold beyond the crystal sea, about the angels singing and the old redemption story. And some sweet day I'll sing up there the song of victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior forever. He sought me and bought me with his redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew him, and all my love is to him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood.
All right, welcome back from our break. I hope you enjoyed that rendition of Victory in Jesus from my beautiful wife. Again, we do what we can. We're kind of a lower budget here, so we got to stick within copyright rules. But again, the break there is just trying to again, as it says, a break to get us to refocus a little bit, to come back and shift gears a little bit. Let me pull back on the full music here. And so we can get into the new segment that I said we're going to get into this week, a new segment called Drop the Ball. And so if you got a new segment, you need a new sound. So I want to get this new sound going here. Bring it on up.
Drops the ball! He drops the ball!
That's right. He drops the ball. Drops the ball. Now, let me tell you what this segment's all about. It comes from the analogy. Obviously, it's a sports analogy. That was a sports cost from, I believe, about 1998, a baseball game. But I want you to picture like a football player. Now, I don't watch much football. My brothers do. I don't. But I want you to picture the wide receiver. He's been given the pass. He's caught the pass. And he's on his way to the end zone. Nobody's around him. And then he takes his eye off where he's going. He starts showboating a little bit. Maybe he's doing like the high step. And the ball just slips out of his hand. And he just drops it. And he'd be like, oh no, how can this be? How can you do it? Now, we're not going to be talking about sports here, but I'm going to pick up that kind of analogy of dropping the ball. But this is going to come from teachers. Teachers of the Word of God. Now, let me say, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I've never made mistakes. But the reason I'm choosing these is because these are common things that happen and can be used to lead you to a point. And if you're not aware of them, you can be taken in. And so I'm going to be a segment that we do from time to time. And this one, the first person to drop the ball here is a person by the name of Pastor Mike Todd. Pastor Mike Todd. He is the lead pastor in Tulsa, Oklahoma, behind the church called Transformation Church. Again, nothing wrong with that. I don't know the guy personally. Now, this guy I didn't even really pay attention to. I guess it says he's a New York Times best-selling author of relationship goals. Truthfully, a pastor on the New York Times bestsellers list doesn't really inspire hope for me, because usually they're off, and they usually get there, unfortunately, by a few shady means. Not saying he did. I'm just saying I've heard of cases. But he came to limelight here, to my attention more or less, because of something that happened here earlier this month. It happened during one of his sermons. And so I'm going to play the clip for you of what happened. It's only about 2 minutes long. And then I'm going to play a second clip of him. Now, not going to tell you really what it's about, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a warning here. If you've got a gag reflex, please be careful for it. If you don't know what that is, you'll figure that out pretty quick. But I'm going to tell you, there are 3 mistakes that he makes. He makes a technical mistake, he makes a fallacy mistake, and then he really drops the ball. And is it in this segment? Yeah, they're kind of in this segment, but they're in his whole sermon. I'm not going to go through his whole sermon, just this section, and then I'll point towards the rest. So remember, those 3 things. I'm going to talk about those 3 things specifically. So let's go on over, and let's play the clip for you, and then I'm going to talk about it a little bit, and then I'll play a second clip. It'll only a total of about 3 minutes.
Changing something, and you don't see it clearly yet, but you hear. And this is where most people would not face Jesus anymore. What most people would do is turn away. What I'm telling you is, just as he's physically standing here, knowing what's coming, God's saying, can you physically and spiritually and emotionally be able to stand when getting the vision or receiving it might get nasty? I'm gonna say it in a point just like that. Receiving vision from God might get nasty. You mean, God, I just bought, in crazy faith, I just bought my dream car. And now you're going to ask me to sell it back and ride in the hoopty again? Yeah, because the vision I'm about to give you, it might get nasty. And do you hear and see the responses of the people? What I'm telling you is how you just reacted is how the people in your life will react when God is doing what it takes for the miracle. What are you saying? This man was blind, and what he was trying to do with this man is give him his DNA.
All right. So, again, if you're our visual audience there, apologize, I didn't give you a warning. If you're our listening audio people, let me explain what just took place. He was doing a sermon on Mark 8, which I'm going to go back and talk about a little bit here, do a little bit of teaching. But in Mark 8, he's talking about Jesus healing the man a blind man, and Jesus uses spit. And so what you heard was him developing we'll say spittle, and spitting into his hands, and he has his brother, that's who it is, his brother on the stage, and he wipes the spit over his brother's eyes. Now, keep in mind, this is just a couple of weeks ago, so this is during the time what you would call COVID time. And if you think about that, you may be going, that sounds disgusting and unsanitary. Well, you're absolutely right, it is. And so this is why it caught attention. But again, I want to remind you, he makes 3 errors in here that I'm going to focus on. He makes a technical error, he makes a fallacy, and he drops the ball completely. And so we're going to be doing that. Now, to be fair to him, he did put out an apology for this. And I'm going to play the apology now. And there's a reason for it. It's because in the apology, something else happens. Nothing too bad, but just something I want to point out. Because he gives an apology, but then he tells you to do something. And that's what I want to point out as well. So I'm going to jump on over to his apology here. So we'll make that come up here. And you'll just take a listen. I want to be fair to him, give him the best chance he has. That's my goal. I don't want to be unfair to him. So let's bring up the apology.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I hope you're having an amazing Monday. I just want to acknowledge what happened yesterday when the spit hit the fan. I watched it back, and it was disgusting. Like, that was gross. I want to validate everybody's feelings. That was a distraction to what I was really trying to do. I was really trying to make the word come alive and for people to see the story. But yesterday it got too live, and I own that. And I just want to make sure people know that we want to help people. We want people to see Jesus. We want people to feel loved. We want people who are desperate to be able to find hope. And I'm passionate about that, so much so that I try to do extreme things to help people get it. And yesterday it crossed the line. So I love you guys. I appreciate everybody that's been praying for us and sending us messages. And to anybody who just saw that 3-minute clip, I really encourage you to go back and watch the whole message. There's some truth and some life in there that could potentially change your whole life. When Jesus spit on that man, he was blind and then he could see. For my brother, who I love and honor so much, I just called him. He was bald before I spit on him, and he's still bald today. So no miracle here. And so next time I'll rethink and do something differently. I love everybody. I'm praying for everybody. And Transformation Nation, thank you for riding. We're going to represent God to the lost and found for transformation in Christ. All right, everybody, have an amazing week. Peace.
All right, so there's his apology, and as I said, I wanted to be fair to him, because he apologized for it, and the reason that made news is because people were like, that was disgusting, that was unsanitary, that kind of thing. Look, in all fairness, his brother knew what he was getting into. I don't think he called his brother on stage and said, hey, I just want you to stand there and put up with whatever I do. Now, I think his brother was well aware of what was going to happen, and so he said, look, he understands he went too far. And I think people just kind of reacted to it, so he was right in putting out an apology. That's why I wanted to play it. He apologized for going too far. But at the same time, as I said, there's a couple of mistakes I want to point out. There's the technical mistake, there's the fallacy mistake, and then there's the drop in the ball. Now, I'm going to talk about each one of those because they're progressively worse. They really are. They're progressively worse. The technical, it's a problem, but it's not that bad. The fallacy is what led down the wrong road. And the reason I want to focus on this is because if you're not secure on a foundation of the gospel, you may not even have caught the problem. Now, in his apology, he did say apology for it. They said, hey, I want you to go listen to the whole sermon because there's truth in there. So that's what I did. Why not? Take some time, go listen to it. It's about 2 hours long. It really is. So I went and listened to it. And I still found the same mistake. But yet, people were saying it was great, it was amazing, it really touched them, and there's a reason for it, and this is where, and it happens because of where he dropped the ball. So, let me get into the mistakes. Let me get into the 3 that I'm going to point out here. And again, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I've probably been guilty of doing some of these myself. It's enough for us to be aware of it, though, so we don't get tripped up. We don't get trapped, that kind of thing. So what was the first mistake? Well, the first mistake is the technical. And it's what happened in the very beginning. The technical mistake is where he's coming along and he's doing an illustration. That's really what the whole thing is. He admits it's about making it come alive. And I'm all for that. Make the scriptures come alive. Get the people to try to engage in it. That's what an illustration partly does. It partly makes people come in. It makes people to realize it. But an illustrations, the point of an illustration is really to drive home your point. That's what it was. That's an illustration. Illustrations are important in messages. They help the point stick. But in my opinion here, this is my opinion, people are free to disagree with me, a great illustration is something that drives home the point, and then about 2-3 minutes later, it's forgotten. Not the point, the illustration. When you get a bad illustration, and this is what happened to him, this is why it's a technical mistake, and I'm not faulting him for it, because it happens, and he's apologizing for it. When you do it wrong, then the only thing people remember is the illustration. They don't remember the point. They don't remember what you were trying to say. They just remember the illustration. Unfortunately, this is what happened to him, and this is why it became so viral. This is why it became so widespread, because people went, oh, that was disgusting. And so he put out the apology. That was a technical mistake. Truthfully, that can happen to anybody, so I'm not faulting him for that. Now, so that's the first one. Unfortunately, what happens is that technical mistake is the one that everybody's blowing up in proportion. That's not the one people should be upset about. That's not the problem. The problem is in the fallacy, which then led to him dropping the ball. So what was his fallacy? Well, he was teaching from Mark chapter 8. I said we're going to look at that in a minute. Mark chapter 8 is a man who was blind. The people ask Jesus, can you come help this man who's blind? So Jesus takes him out. And then Jesus does something that would be classified in our culture as disgusting. I'm going to talk about this a bit. Jesus spits on the man's eyes to restore his sight. What's another word for sight? Well, another word for sight is the word that he's using, vision. Jesus restored this man's vision. Here's how he goes. This man restored his vision, so Jesus is going to give you a vision. That is called the equivalence fallacy. The equivalent fallacy. That is what he has made. He's made the equivalent fallacy. It's actually called the equivocation fallacy, if I give the full name. The equivocation fallacy. That's when a word has two meanings, and then you interchange the two meanings at will. This is what's happened. He's taken the meaning of Jesus restored this man's vision, therefore God's going to give you a vision. And you heard it even in that illustration. And as I said, I went and I listened to the whole message, and that was his whole point. Then he starts talking about vision. But it's all built on this equivocation fallacy. It really is. It's all built upon it. His whole argument is, his whole teaching is, it's based on a fallacy. That Jesus gave this man vision, therefore Jesus is going to give you vision. See, you got another problem there is one that's quite common, and if you've been with me in various teachings, they've taken what's called a historical narrative, something Jesus actually did, and this is the story of telling it, and they made that a prescription, something for all time, that he's going to get his vision. Well, if that's true, then why did the Apostle Paul, most believe, suffer from an eye ailment and it not get healed? Well, he just didn't get his vision. But see, there's an equivocation fallacy. And that the equivocation fallacy leads, as I said, to him dropping the ball. So how did he drop the ball? To understand this, we've got to go and visit the text in Mark chapter 8. So let's go do that. Then he, that is Jesus, came to Bethsaida, and they brought a blind man to him and begged him to touch him. So he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes and put his hands on him, he asked him if he saw anything. And he looked up and said, I see men like trees walking. Then he put his hands on his eyes again and made him look up. And he was restored and saw everything clearly. Then he sent him away to his house, saying, neither go into the town nor tell anyone in the town. Now, I'm going to stop there. There's a couple of things wrong with what Pastor Todd has taught in this case, in this message. And this, again, I'm not totally faulting him. I don't know all his theology. I don't know all his teaching. I'm just picking on this one because it's public. He makes it public. So do I. You can go find my teachings, which is fine. And I'm sure people can go through them and find mistakes I've made. But it's to make us aware that we do make these mistakes to not be led astray. But even in his illustration is a little wrong to do it. He spits in his hands and rubs the spit on his brother's eyes. That's not what Jesus did. It was the exact opposite. But he also makes his teaching because he has a point he wants to make, and he's wrong even in what we call his exegesis. He says there at the end of the video clip I played for you that Jesus wanted to give him his DNA. Well, it's actually not true. What Jesus was doing, it was common in that culture that people believed that the spittle of a person actually had healing properties. And so what Jesus did there, as gross as it seems to us, was not actually uncommon in their day. And Jesus was using their method to heal. In other words, what the man would expect that for Jesus to do. And Jesus does it, and Jesus shows that that's not healing completely. So the ways of men can never actually heal. The ways of men can't restore. They can give you some part, but it is only Jesus himself who can restore. So this is the point of it. But what's the whole point of the text? Now, here's where he completely drops the ball. And this is where you'll find that most of them do it. It's very common. So I said, you got the technical, which it's an issue, but hey, who cares? It happens. The fallacy, which is a problem, because the fallacy, the equivocation fallacy, becomes his foundation for his entire teaching. But that's not even the whole foundation. His initial foundation, so the equivocation fallacy is like the second layer, is the floor that he builds upon, but the foundation is where he's dropped the ball, is he's made the text about us. This is why people respond to it and say, oh, it touched me so well, because he's speaking to what they want to hear. He's telling them that God's going to give you a vision for this year. God's going to make you see it clearly in this coming year. This is what he's doing. He's taking what this healing and saying, well, God's going to give you your... Now, remember, he's changed the definition of vision. He's not talking about the fact that Jesus is going to say, hey, nobody's going to need laser eye surgery, but you're not going to need those glasses or contacts anymore. He's talking about a vision, a plan, a destiny for this coming year. That's what he's done. And everyone's like, in a time that we're in where everyone's like, well, where are we going to go? Everybody seems lost. Hearing that, hey, God's going to give you a plan that you're going to succeed, that people are going to do. It may not make sense to you. It may get messy, but God's going to bring you through. People are like, yeah, that's great. Yeah, amazing. But he's missed the point of the text. See, he's made it about us. He's made it about you and I. Now, is there something we can draw from this? Well, sure there is. But what's the point of the text? Well, let's go back to it. And I want to read the next section, because this is what the point is. So here we are, picking up verse 27. It says, now Jesus and his disciples went out to the towns of Caesarea Philippi, and on the road he asked his disciples. Now, so that means when Jesus sent the man away, Jesus didn't even go back into the town. He didn't. Jesus just sent the man, and they left. So they went on their way. But here's the point of the text. It's the question that Jesus asked his disciples following this. Who do men say I am? That was the point. He had just done a miracle. The people believed Jesus could heal. But the question was, who is Jesus? That's the question. It says, so they answered, John the Baptist, but some say Elijah, and others one of the prophets. He said to them, but who do you say I am? Jesus answered and said to him, you are the Christ. Then he strictly warned them that they should tell no one about him. Now, there's parallels in Matthew. But that's the point of the text. You see, this whole text was not about, hey, Jesus is going to give you the vision. Jesus is going to give you a plan for 2022. Look, I can understand this. In the position I'm in, I have to plan for the next year. I plan ahead. Sometimes it works great. Sometimes it doesn't. Why? Because we get different restrictions. But I seek the Lord what he would have us to do. I can understand this. But that's not the point. You see, if you followed up his message with the question, well, who is Jesus? And you just listen to his message, well, Jesus is the vision giver. Jesus gives me vision. Jesus is my inspiration. And the same thing happens here. Jesus asked the disciples, who are they saying I am? That you're John the Baptist. You're a great preacher. That's what you're doing. You're a great preacher. Or you're one of the prophets who can do miracles. And that's a question that is important for today. That this miracle was asking, who is Jesus? That was the point of all miracles. If you go read John's gospel, John calls them signs, and they were designed to prove who Jesus is. Every miracle Jesus did was not designed just so we can learn, say, oh, I can get vision from this. Or Jesus is going to make sure I have lots of money. No, it was about proving who he is. Because who Jesus is a fundamental question that we have to build on. You see, if we hold it and any definition of Jesus that is incorrect, then we're on a bad foundation. And it's no wonder we can be led astray. No wonder why we can be taken in by these things, because the foundation isn't secure. And this is the problem. Again, like I said, I don't know who Michael Todd is. I haven't looked at all his work. I can't tell you. But I'm just saying, from this one, we can be led to the wrong conclusion. It started with the fallacy, but then it starts with the underlying foundation that it's all about me. That the text is all about me. It's not. It's about Jesus. And it's that question, who do you say I am? And that would be the end. So the end question to a message like that would not be, have you discovered the vision? Because one of the problems is going to put all the emphasis on you. That you have to ask for the vision. That you have to understand the vision. You've got to carry out this vision. It could get nasty. You'll be able to see it clearly. That kind of thing. Whatever. This is what it is. He jumps off a lot in his message too. He doesn't stick on to the point of vision. He sidetracks, but that happens to a lot of speakers when they get going. They get too many thoughts going. Happens to me sometimes. As you can probably tell even through a podcast. But the point is, it's all about you. It is. Look, and I'm not saying that Jesus can't give you a plan and a desire for the new year. I've never said that. Jesus can do it. Jesus has done it to me, where I'm searching and I'm praying about it, and all of a sudden I kind of get a plan of where he wants us to go. I do this every time I go to prepare a sermon series. What's the direction, Lord, you want me to go in? And I start searching the scriptures. And so I'm not saying Jesus can't do that, but to make the scriptures about that means you've missed the point. That the scriptures are not about us. Do they speak to us? Absolutely. But they're not about us. And so even this text, it's not about Jesus giving us a vision and a plan for the future. It's about who do we say he is. Because when we put the emphasis on ourselves, we're going to end up with a weight that we can't carry. A weight that we can't carry. We can't deal with. A burden that is too heavy for us. Why? Because then what happens if I get to the end and there was no vision, or I had a vision, it wasn't carried out? Who's at fault here? Well, I am. It's my fault. I'm the failure. I'm the one that didn't carry it out. God gave me this amazing plan to carry out, and I didn't carry it out. You see the weight that puts on us? It really does. And this is the wrong focus. And so the proper focus is that question. Who do you say Jesus is? Is Jesus a life coach who can give you direction? Is Jesus a vision giver who helps you plan the future? Is Jesus the ATM who just gives you money? Is Jesus your therapist who will tell you just how to have better relationships with people? Is Jesus just a pill that's going to make you feel better and add on to your life like vitamins? Is that who Jesus is? Is that who you're saying Jesus is? So this is the question that we have to ask. Because the truth of the reality is that Jesus is exactly who Peter claimed him to be at the end there. And when he said, who is Jesus? Who do you say I am? He says, you are the Christ. What does that mean, that he is the Christ? That he was the promised one. He was the one foretold of all the way back in Genesis 3:15. He's the one that was foretold to be who the scepter would come from in the line of Judah in Genesis chapter 48-49 when Isaac was blessing his children. He is the one who would sit on the throne of David. He is the one whom Isaiah prophesied about, who would be the suffering servant, who would be wounded for our transgressions, pierced for our iniquities, who the sin of us would be laid upon him, who would be counted amongst the wicked at his death, but he would be buried in a rich man's tomb. This is all prophesied. He is the fulfillment of the prophecies that the Old Testament spoke about. And he is the only one who can bring salvation to humanity. He is the hope for our world. He is the Prince of Peace, and he is the one who will deal with sin once and for all. That is who Jesus is. That is the point. He is God Almighty, taken on flesh. He is our Redeemer. He is our Savior. He is King of Kings. He is Lord of Lords. But the question remains, who do you say Jesus is? Because that is the one question that you have to answer. Because answering that question wrong means our entire life will be built on the wrong foundation. And this isn't just our life that is on the line. It is eternity. And so that is what you have to ask. So when it came to the end, this is why I said the greatest problem of that illustration and his message is not the technical of the illustration gone wrong. That's a problem. The fallacy is a greater problem. The equivocation fallacy is a greater problem. But the greatest problem is the fact that he absolutely dropped the ball. That's what he did. All right, so I want to thank you for joining me here again for another time of Foundation. There's our music. And again, I encourage you, if you have any questions, you have any comments, write into me. You can write pastorsteventeed@gmail.com. That's Stephen with a V, just like in the name of the podcast, Foundation with Steve Teed. Write in. I'll be happy to talk to you. I'll be happy to send you a message. But I do ask you that question. Who do you say Jesus is? And are you building on the foundation of Jesus? So until next time, may you continue to grow in our Lord Jesus Christ. May you continue to seek him. And may your life be built on his foundation.